All right. I imagine you've got some sort of joke to start off the podcast, Pete.
I've got some ditty. Whether you would call it a joke or not is highly subjective, although most people seem to find them amusing. It's just not you.
Just get on with it.
Or maybe it's your reaction to it.
Just get on with it.
Police arrested 2 kids yesterday, one for drinking battery acid and the other for eating fireworks.
Go on.
They charged one and let the other off.
Knew it was coming. Well, welcome everybody to season 3, episode 19 of the podcast. And there has been an Apple event. And
Has there?
there has. It's quite far out, and we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
So we are indeed going to do that today. As usual, we'll put some chapter markers if you want to skip straight to that, although we have a little bit of news and stuff to do first. Anyway, welcome, Pete.
Welcome, Dave.
Nice to have you.
Nice to have the head.
I don't know.
And welcome to all of you listening. Maybe you're watching, maybe you're just listening on your favourite podcast platform of choice. If you are, and you'd like to see what we look like, consider again. But if you do, it's youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast. You can see us in all our Technicolor glory.
Excellent. And they're in as well.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
I'm
Erin's
always
here.
here. I'm always, yeah.
It's always nice to have you here as well, Erin.
That was very nice of you to
Yes,
say.
today is National Be Nice to Erin Day.
Oh,
Did you know that?
I didn't.
I've just made it up.
Did you?
Yeah, so we're going to try and get through this podcast without being horrible to Erin once.
That's going to be
I'm
very
excited.
difficult if you've seen the jumper she's wearing.
I think you failed
right,
already.
you failed immediately,
Whoa.
and there was no need for it.
I don't think you've got great fashion sense. I'm just going to say it.
I didn't realise it was a jumper. I just assumed it was some kind of rug.
Erin, your face. That's amazing. Good.
Okay.
We'd- Look at it.
It does look like. I tell you what,
I'm not taking fashion advice from 2 people sat there in the ugliest shirts I've ever worn, calling it fashion. It's not fashion. It's boring. You're boring. Express
Did
yourselves
you just
better.
say the ugliest shirts you've ever worn?
Ever seen?
I'm pretty sure
Terrible
you said
shirts.
worn.
What's wrong with my shirt?
It doesn't do anything for you.
Okay. What is a shirt supposed to do for you? Is it supposed
the
to?
most brutal?
Is it supposed to sort of gently massage me, or is it supposed to reassure me with words of comfort?
I think she's
I'm
talking
not
the
gonna
aesthetic.
explain further.
So
It's
you
okay.
don't think purple's my colour? So what is my colour? Come on.
I'm not going to give you your colour.
Why
You don't
not?
deserve to know. We've got some great news today. Take it away.
This feels like the tail is indeed wagging the dog today. So,
It was always going to come at some point.
Yeah, kind of a jute rug is what I'm thinking about. You know, the sort you have at the front door. If you don't want just a plain brown one, you have like a stripy one just to show that you're hip and modern. That's what it looks
And
like.
the black bristles are usually a little bit more stiff, aren't they?
Yeah.
To get the dirt off your
Yeah,
feet.
maybe they've just been worn.
We're
down
saying
since
you look
probably-
like a doormat, Erin. Not that we treat you like a doormat. Just saying you look like one.
Yeah, and probably have similar levels of intelligence.
Oh, this is brutal.
National Don't Insult Erin Day.
No, be
has
nice to Erin
started
Day.
Terribly.
Be nice to Erin. I think what we're doing is that we're lancing the boil the need to insult you before we move into the.
Let's see the boil.
You know, a week goes by, or now 2 weeks of the podcast, and the boil festers and gets bigger with pus of the desire to insult Erin, and then what we need to do is just pop it, and
Oh,
and now we're just gently putting a damp gauze over it.
I'm hoping nobody's eating while listening to this
A lot of
podcast.
people do cook dinner over this, so if you're
Yeah.
doing some kind of spaghetti carbonara or maybe macaroni cheese, maybe apologies are needed. But yeah.
I just got to say, how do you feel, Erin, on National Be Nice to Erin Day to be likened to a festering boil?
It's really nice, actually. Yeah. Lovely.
So, oh dear, what a start! What a start to the podcast. What have you tuned into? I'll tell you what though. Let's do a comment from our last podcast.
Yes, because we talked about customer service in part, weren't we?
We were.
And it was to a degree a little bit ranty, a little bit negative.
It was, although we also did some good customer service stories. But then we had a comment with a nice customer service story. So I thought I would share the comment with the audience. So it's from Anna, who's a regular listener. Hello, Anna. And what she said was, with regard to her first generation 12.9-inch iPad Pro, she was heading to work in London, and there was a serious road traffic collision that happened in front of her. And so she was she is first aid trained and one of the first on the scene, so she threw her bag down to go and assist. Now, that then happened to shatter the iPad and dent it, and so she took it into Apple Covent Garden, where she explained the situation, and what Apple did was replace it for free. Having heard the story, they swapped it out with a new unit. Now, what Anna said was she was taken aback because she was more than willing to pay for the replacement, but Apple insisted that she didn't. And what she said was, that's an experience that will always stick with me. It was quite humbling. So I thought that was a nice customer service
really
story.
Nice. That is really nice. And I think it just confirms what we already suspected, which is that Anna's a very decent human being as well.
Indeed. And shows as well that Apple are capable of delivering great customer service, because we mentioned Apple, of course, 2 weeks ago. But, we have had great customer service from Apple, and we've also had mediocre customer service from
and
Apple.
I've been thinking about our podcast and thinking about customer service in general. And to a degree, customer service is cultural. It can be decided by protocols and things like that. But as we know, it can also be down to the individual human being involved. And it may well be that Anna dealt with someone who not only, clearly Apple have given the latitude to make these decisions to certain employees, but clearly this employee had the decency to, or decency, I mean, technically that Apple has done nothing wrong here, but they had the wisdom to show that. And what a great testimony to when things are done right. So well done, Apple, and thank you very much for sharing, Anna.
Yeah. Now, I know that Anna has bought a lot of Apple gear since, and I'm sure that's in part due to this experience, and that's the way it goes. When companies deliver great customer service, it's a good investment into their future. It's very short-sighted, I think, when companies don't deliver good customer service. I just wanted to touch on something you said there as well. Our attitude makes a big difference. Now, I mentioned in that podcast about the problems I'm having with my motorcycle, and in the last couple of weeks I've had phone calls with Moto Guzzi in Italy, and I have to say, it's been a little bit stressful, but I've kept my cool, and as a result, I have a result.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that, because I saw your latest video where it still wasn't fixed, but
well, it still isn't fixed, but at least I know what's happening. So anyway,
that's great. And I think sometimes it's important to stress this. We get cross about Apple's giving me poor customer service, or this company's giving me poor customer service, and at the end of the day, we're dealing with a human being who has all the stresses and strains of life that we all do, probably got stuff going on in their life too. And whatever it is that they're dealing with for you isn't actually their fault personally, or very rarely. So cutting them a bit of slack and saying, look, this is a problem, but I understand it's not you, you're not to cause the problem, can go a long way in softening people. And if they have something within their power to do, they're much more likely to do it if you're kind to them. So be kind. Yeah. Which I'm sure everyone that listens to this podcast probably is.
Mm. Anyway, let's move on to the news.
Oh,
now,
okay.
Erin, frequently you get excited about smart glasses.
I do.
So you'll be interested to know that Lenovo released, or I say released, and I use that in the very loosest possible sense of the term, because they didn't release anything. They announced their T1 glasses.
Okay.
So what this is a wearable virtual monitor.
Mm.
So they're not actually smart glasses in any way whatsoever, nor are they even wireless. It's cabled via USB to your computer. So what it is basically a monitor that you can wear.
Eye headphones, basically.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Well, yeah.
It's kind of boring.
It is a little bit, and it's a bit of an odd thing. I'm kind of wondering who is it that's going to buy this. And why would Lenovo announce it when it doesn't exist yet?
I was going to say, no one's going to buy it because you can't get them anywhere. They say they're going to release them at Tech Life 2022.
Well, okay. Well, it is still 2022, so maybe they will appear. I mean, we've got some renderings of it, but quite...
Yeah, they're a good-looking unit, aren't they?
No. Quite amusingly, they put a link on Twitter to the website, and on the homepage of the website it links to the glasses aren't even featured. You have to go into some kind of... You either watch the video or you've got to go into another page to find the actual product. And this is another massive fail. If you're doing marketing and people might be interested in what you've actually got to show them, at least link the website to the right place.
Yeah, it's pretty crud. And it's just another example of vaporware, isn't it? I mean, at this rate, I might as well, announce my Mars colony ship.
Have you got a Mars colony ship?
Oh,
and more importantly, can we put Erin on it?
Let's put it this way: it's as real as the Lenovo T1 glasses.
Okay.
Oh, well, I haven't got a render yet, but I'm sure I can do one to add into the podcast.
Anyway, these glasses will be very popular with people who need to have total privacy with their monitor and never have anyone look at what they're looking at. So I can think of all sorts of good applications for that.
Excellent.
Let's move on to our main topic, which is the Apple event. Now, we decided not to do a live stream of the Apple event this time, mainly because we knew it was going to be phone, watch, and... Pete, are you actually drawing a Mars colony ship?
Yep, you can put that into the edit. There you go.
Thanks. Unfortunately, anybody who's now clicked on the chapter marker and jumped straight to the bit about the iPhone event is going to be like, what?
It's going to see that.
Well, they're not going to see it because that is not going to go in the edit, Pete, because it looks quite dodgy what you've drawn, and it's not. That's not going to see the light of day. Let's get back to what I was saying, which is we decided not to do a live stream because iPhones and watches and
there was two reasons. What you're about to say, so finish that.
Well, I sort of did, and I mean I had a little bit more to go, but then you interrupted me.
Yeah, which is part of the nuances and character of the podcast.
Okay, so I'll just finish what I was going to say, which is not really our thing.
Thank you. And also, we couldn't be bothered.
Thank you for that. Good. But we did watch the event. I watched it live.
We both watched it live.
We both watched it live.
And we were messaging each other throughout with observations, shall we say.
Observations. And I've got to say, I think it's fair to say that both of us were perhaps not entertained. Is that the polite way of saying it?
I was more entertained by our exchanges over text message than the event itself.
It was a little bit predictable, and rather amazingly, Macworld released an article kind of predicting how the event was going to go, and it did go very much like that. But we're not going to necessarily do it in order. We maybe make some observations just generally about the event, but then we'll do iPhone.
Do you know what it reminded me of?
Go on.
Have you seen the live-action remake of The Lion King?
Why would I want to see that?
So you haven't?
Obviously not.
Have you seen the original of The Lion King?
Of course not.
Have you?
No, I refuse to watch a live-action.
Okay,
Disney
well, the
movies.
live-action one is basically more or less a shot-for-shot remake of the animated one, but in live action. Of course, it's all CGI, but it's pretty good CGI. That is good. But it's like, if you've seen the original Lion King, it was like kind of like, okay. This event felt like, if you've seen an Apple event, okay. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing particularly...
It was very predictable. The usual camera sweeping in under the rainbow, and
there wasn't a lot of energy to it, though, was it? Even from the presenters.
All of the presenters. I was talking about this with Erin earlier, right? And both you and I, Pete, have had quite a good deal of training in public speaking, and it is a difficult thing to do, and it is very difficult to stand in front of a camera if you're not used to doing that. But they've got some coaching going on, which basically says that their feet have to be kind of just over shoulder width apart, and all of the gestures, obviously you won't be able to see this if you're listening on the podcast, but they kind of make spears with their hands, and they do this all the time, up and down.
So unnatural.
It looks ridiculous, and I guess it's a help if you're not used to doing it. Then it gives you something to do with your hands so that you don't look awful in the present. But I didn't think some of the presenters were quite poor. One of them sounded like an AI. I can't remember which one it was.
Was it Erin version 2?
Could well have been.
Yeah.
And since you apparently have good fashion sense, Erin, although we're all questioning that. What did you think about some of the outfits?
To sum up all of the outfits, I would describe them as almost fair. That's all.
Sort of like your comment then, really.
Almost good.
I would sum up, there was a lot of pantaloonies going on, wasn't there?
What was with the yellow jumpsuit thing the woman was wearing?
No, there were several women wearing, might have been men too, but I noticed that the women were all wearing like MC Hammer parachute pants. Do you remember the MC Hammer parachute pants?
Well, I do, although you are older than me, so you probably have a better recollection.
Probably.
Did you have some of those yourself?
We couldn't afford them after the Blitz.
And I feel like some people will now think we're just being incredibly negative and sarcastic about Apple. Well, we kind of are, but they do ask for it. They do the same thing every time.
And particularly in this segment, the phones and the watches is all very.
And you just know Tim Cook is going to say something about iPhone or whatever offering a magical experience being essential to our lives. So I don't entirely agree with any of that. We, of course, started off somewhat predictably with the Apple Watch has saved my life stories.
Yeah, what do you think of those, Erin?
One of my favourite ones was this lady being like, I was in a really traumatic plane crash. It was awful, really, really horrible situation. And then they recreated the entire scene of a plane crash, made her sit in it and retell her story. So
you do realise, Erin, that was probably an actress.
Yeah, I know, but it's still funny.
You said something about, what about the person next to her who had the arm cut off in the crash?
Yeah, if there was an arm and your arm was forcibly ripped off in the crash and you're kind of lying there going, I need help, I need my Apple Watch. Oh no, it's over there. What are you going to do? It's not, and if you're getting attacked by a bear and the bear rips your arm off.
Oh, the bear attacks. I couldn't stop laughing.
And I'm not being funny as well, but this might sound really insensitive, but if you fall into a trash compactor,
Erin, listen carefully.
If you fall into a trash compactor, it was Star Wars-esque, wasn't it? They had to use the Apple phone to call C-3PO to stop them being. It's probably not. Someone's peril is not something to laugh about. But
I suspect if we were any of the people who were in those experiences where Apple Watch was indeed genuinely useful in saving our lives, we probably would be quite happy.
They're probably going to unsubscribe. And I'm not taking away. There are, I've known people personally who have managed to use Apple Watch, my own mum included, when she'd had a fall, to get in contact with someone. And otherwise, she would have just laid there on the floor in the cold all night till the carers came in the next morning. So I'm not taking away from what Apple Watch does. It is life-saving. It is amazing in that point of view. It just felt like that they said, right, let's sex up the disaster stories. Let's find the best stories we can find, and then get some that are even better. It just felt a little bit forced.
Yeah, and we like to have a bit of fun on the podcast. We do see the value in Apple Watch and the things it can do, and if it is genuinely saving lives, even if those are slightly unique experiences. I mean, we're not likely to get attacked by bears in this country.
Hope not.
Which is
a
shame.
It helps you to remember them. It is.
Why'd you look at me when you said that?
I don't know. I was
just looking in that direction.
Yeah, I just happened to be looking that way. Shall we talk about iPhone?
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a case of meet the new phone.
Same as the old phone.
To butcher a line from The Who. But there are a lot of similarities, but actually I think there are some differences as well, possibly more so with the Pro model.
You hear it here, folks. There's a lot the same, but there's some things that are different.
Well, look, what is the same? You've got the same display, still the XDR OLED display, nice display, same brightness, same resolution.
Correct.
So that's the main part of the phone. The chassis of the phone is exactly the same, with the exception of the SIM tray, which we'll come to. The camera is the main sort of area of focus.
I see what you did
See what I
there.
did there?
Yeah. Let's expose some details on that, shall we?
Well, it's a slightly faster lens on
Yes.
the main wide-angle.
It's 0.1
Camera.
faster.
Yes. So f1.5 instead of f1.6. But I think the sensor has also been increased in size, and the pixels on the sensor for that camera are bigger. So that helps with light gathering and reduction of noise to a degree. Obviously, these are tiny sensors, so they need all the help they can get. And Apple has added some extra help. So we've got the sensor shift image stabilization. So this is where the sensor actually moves to compensate your movement.
Yep.
And faster nighttime exposures. Apparently they're twice as quick.
Yeah, which makes sense if you've got these bigger sensors, bigger pixels, it can gather more light in the time that you have the sensor open.
And Apple was talking about this photonic engine, which is marketing speak for
Star Trek.
marketing
Sounds
speak for
very
Star Trek.
It
Oh,
sounds
what,
so
like a
Star
spaceship
Trek.
engine?
Those who know. No.
Okay. I don't know because I'm not a Trekkie. So
No, you're not a big fan of Darth Vader, are you?
no. Fun fact though, I worked on a website for Darth Vader.
How's this your David Prowse story?
Sorry to bore you with my
I
story.
think you've already. Well, you've
Well,
used
yeah.
it on the podcast before.
Have I?
Yes.
You sure, Pete?
Yep. In
Okay.
season 2, episode 3.
Oh. Well, he was a nice guy. May he rest in peace. So you've got the photonic engine, which is a more advanced AI processing signal chain for improving these images. In other words, removing the noise from them without making it look like mush. And I find that photos that come off the iPhone always look good at the resolution for which they're intended, which is, you know, if you're sharing stuff on Instagram and all of that, you can get a really great picture out of your iPhone. But
Yeah.
if you start sort of getting into too much detail, you can soon see
It's
the
in-
limitations.
Yeah, it does. But I think that's fair enough for what it's intended for.
Absolutely. As a keen photographer, I can tell you it does not beat a normal camera, and it's going to take a while before. In fact, I'm not convinced it ever can due to the science involved, but they'll get jolly close, I should imagine. The new action mode is interesting.
Yes.
So it seems like Apple want to take a bite out of GoPro and Insta360 here. And I wonder whether this is going to spawn a whole load of rugged cases with various mounts, for doing action shots with your iPhone.
Yeah, interesting that.
And that would be quite useful, I suppose, if because it means you don't have to go out and buy another camera, like a GoPro. So I'm bored listening to myself.
It
frankly.
was very boring. Shall we talk about the lens on the front? Because that has also got a faster, slightly more faster.
It is f1.9 versus f2.2.
And it now has autofocus as well.
Yeah, not sure whether you need that on such a wide-angle lens, but there we go. It has autofocus.
So moving on the things that are slightly better, battery life has gone from a whopping 19 up to a tremendous 20.
This is hours of video playback.
Yeah, which is the kind of metric that Apple seem to use.
But actually, I would say don't knock that. You've got the same screen, the same case size exactly.
I'm not knocking it. It's just boring, isn't it?
It is, but also it's slightly lighter. I've got this somewhere else. It's 0.07 ounces lighter than the previous models. So that would make me think that the battery isn't actually bigger. So how have they achieved that extra hour? Is that more optimizations of the chip? Erin's yawning.
Yes.
That's how excited she is.
Because this is all boring as guff.
Okay, so how about the processor? Are we excited about this?
Well, it has a whole one extra GPU core in the A15. This is, of course, the A15
From last year.
Bionic.
The one that was in the Pro last year.
Yeah, and it does have a remarkable statistic
Go on.
or thing associated with it. This is the first time in iPhone history, this is how Tim booked with it, for the first time in iPhone history.
Don't do the
Okay,
accent.
we've brought out a chip, a new phone that doesn't have a new chip.
Yeah.
Environment. That's probably what they would Yeah.
I don't know. Let's not knock the A15 Bionic with the 5 GPU cores. That's a really amazing phone chip. It's much faster than anything by any other brand.
Let's just be really clear. I'm not knocking anything here. It was just boring.
I think we've gotten used to these generational improvements each year, especially a new chip. And for us, that is particularly interesting. We wanted to see the A16 because that's usually the first time you see the new cores on which they'll also be building the Mac chips. Use the same performance cores and efficiency cores. So I was really interested to see that. So to get a phone come out and they haven't improved the chip, that's slightly interesting. Obviously, we'll come back to the A16 in a moment. It's a great chip, and you're getting some additional features with the phone. But of course, some of those features, like the photonic engine, like the action mode, could some of those be technically possible on the previous iPhone? Perhaps not with the image stabilization. I often see, like, for instance, you've got the 13 Pro Max.
I have.
I got the 12 Pro Max. You get cinematic mode, I don't.
Yeah.
But is it really the case that the 12 Pro Max wouldn't be capable of doing that?
I doubt it. There's a lot of things. I mean, there are things. I think there were things that they mentioned that will be backward compatible as well to all iPhones back to 6 in some cases.
But yeah, so I think I just need to be clear on my point here. What I'm trying to say is that it's not the new chip that provides you with the new features.
No.
The existing chips would be able to do the same features.
It's the version of the iPhone that
Yeah.
provides you with the new features.
So what that basically means is that the A15 is kind of an irrelevance to it, which means one of the big differentiating factors each year with the iPhone is no longer there. So it is really only the camera upgrades that are the core differences, apart from
the thermal performance.
improved thermal performance, although again we don't have any metrics to say what that is. Obviously there are other things that have changed. The colorways, you can't get pink and green in the new one, so if you wanted pink or green
You
can't, but you can have purple. So lose 2 colors, get 1. Fewer SKUs, supply chain.
Yeah, could be. And of course, as you know from school, if you mix pink and green, you do indeed get purple. So that might be what they've done there.
And we don't have the iPhone Mini anymore. How do you feel about that, Erin?
Kind of sad. I like the little ones.
Yeah.
Cute.
Now, we were talking about this earlier, and the size of the phone. How have you found, because you had an iPhone 8, you're now on is it the 11?
Yeah.
How have you found that slightly larger size?
I'm not loving it just because I can't use the top of my screen comfortably, or I have to use the
So this is
scrolly
the
thing.
thumb stretch. Yeah.
I'm not into that.
And of course, yours is a standard size iPhone. If you had the Maxi, no, they didn't call it that, the Plus size iPhone, then
It's ridiculous.
it's even. I find it quite hard to stretch on.
How are you finding the MagSafe features on that?
Yeah, really good actually.
You can get a case with MagSafe in it on the
I
Apple
didn't.
website for that phone.
I didn't though, did I?
No, you didn't.
In joke, if you're not aware, in
There's-
joke.
I may have dropped Erin's phone during a review of a magnetic phone stand because I had a brain fart and forgot the iPhone 11 didn't have magnets. But it's quite funny if you want to watch it. It's on the main channel, youtube.com/constantgeekery. And quite amazingly, the PR company that sent us that product for review is sending us more products.
Wow.
I don't know why.
Okay.
Look, the big new features, I think there's 2 of these really.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the emergency SOS satellite feature, and I think this is fantastic. Now, there's been lots of stuff on Twitter, mainly from Android fanboys, saying, where's the innovation? Even some very naff adverts from Samsung trying to troll Apple, which are just not a good look, Samsung. Don't bother with that.
And learn from Intel.
So, whereas there is innovation, isn't there, in this new, and the emergency SOS satellite feature is one of those.
That's an incredible piece of innovation. Whether it's the most needed piece of innovation, that's up for debate. But yeah, this ability.
But doesn't this come back to what we were saying about the Apple Watch? It's easy to mock, and we do that and we have a bit of fun. But if you're in that situation where you actually need that feature,
You'd be really pleased, wouldn't you?
you would be jolly pleased that you'd bought the iPhone 14 and not a Galaxy whatever.
Yeah. It could be life-saving. So you've got this ability to ask for help. It's free for 2 years, isn't it?
Mm.
What I thought was interesting about this is Apple have actually invested in call centres to handle those emergencies, which is quite a big investment, one would think.
Yeah, and it sort of indicates it's something they're really going to push in the future as well. So I suspect it will get better.
Yes, I'm curious to see if there's a more strategic plan there that we're yet to fathom, because that is quite an investment.
And it is an innovation. I'm not aware of any other smartphone that can play games with satellites like that.
No.
That is really cool.
And the GPS doesn't count, by the way.
And it's done that as well in the same form factor, exactly the same as iPhone 13. They've put those antennas in. So massive kudos to Apple for that. I think that's a really cool feature.
And the response times on the SMSs, they are slightly reduced over satellite, but probably quicker than having a conversation with you over text.
Anything's quicker than having a conversation with me over text. Do you know why that is, Pete?
Because you don't like talking to people?
I don't like carrying a phone. I tend to leave my phone. You see, Erin's got her phone there. You've got your phone there. Where's my phone?
I'm sure it's ringing with all the people wanting to get hold of
Well, that's the thing. I got no friends. Nobody phones me. So what's the point?
Oh, no, that is not true. That is not true. I phone you. You've got friends, pal.
Yeah.
I have both of your numbers
You've
blocked.
got a friend
you?
in me.
Don't sing, Pete. You've got our numbers blocked, did you say?
Both of yours.
Good to know.
Interesting.
Okay. What's the other main feature that's got on it?
Well, this is the crash detection, and again, this has been mocked, and I'm not going to mock it this time. We did have a little dig at it on the rumour mill in a previous podcast episode, but actually, how Apple's done this is quite clever because it seems to be a combination of three things. It listens for
Crashing
noises. It measures G-forces.
So it uses the accelerometer to rapid deceleration.
And it measures changes in air pressure. So when the airbags go off in a car, obviously that changes the air pressure in the car very quickly. So it looks for sudden changes in air pressure. And it uses those metrics then to determine whether or not you're having or have had a car crash.
How many times has it gone off for you so far, Erin?
I don't have it.
Oh, okay.
Although in other news, you do have a car, sort of, or you're sharing it with someone, are you?
I have a car.
You don't have a license, though, do you?
It's called Walter.
Oh, for goodness sake.
She does have a provisional license. So I think as a public service announcement, in line with these emergency SOS and crash detection features, if you live in the UK, particularly if you live in the southwest of the UK, do not set foot on the road for at least 12 months. That is your public service announcement.
There is an Erin out there. So crash detection, that's quite cool. Obviously, that's in the watch as well. If you're in a car crash, again, it's one of those situations where it's like, do I really need it? But if you do need it, then it's going to be amazing.
It's an insurance policy, isn't it? And they did say that we hope you never need these features, but Apple doesn't do things without researching. So they obviously feel that there is a need for these things, and like I say, there's probably a bigger strategic thing at foot here, which I'm still working on in my head. Maybe people in the comments are ahead of me, but to invest in all these things suggests perhaps, maybe they're getting into some other line of business.
Yes, perhaps. Of course, in the US, Apple also announced that all the phones will be eSIM only. And I've seen quite a backlash to this actually on social media because there are a lot of people who do switch SIM cards between phones and they won't be able to do that anymore with the iPhone 14.
But they'd argue you can do the same thing with an eSIM.
Not straightforward though, is it? Because you've got to speak to your network provider. It's not the same as just opening the SIM tray and swapping your SIM from one phone to another.
I think once you've got an eSIM, you can. I think so.
Okay.
I think I might be wrong there, but I'm looking into it.
Perhaps people are getting upset for no reason. It doesn't matter to us because here in the UK we still get a SIM tray, and actually, if you're in China, I think you get 2 SIM trays on your iPhone. Yeah.
Although you can still use an eSIM in the UK, but you just happen to have. So there's no eSIM exclusively. You get SIM tray.
Yes.
So,
So I would say to US viewers, obviously, you could buy a UK iPhone if you really wanted to SIM tray, but of course, I don't think it will work on your networks because they're different.
And you have to pay about 140 English pounds more than the equivalent phone in the US.
Yes, we'll get to that in a moment, Pete. You are jumping the gun in the notes there. I first of all wanted to say as well, the satellite messaging and the 2 years of free service, we don't get that in the UK. That's US only as well.
That's because we don't have any satellites above us in the UK.
So we're getting less of a product. Now, in the US, all of the prices have been held across all the iPhones. But in the UK, that is not the case at all. So the standard iPhone will cost you £70 more than it did last year, and an iPhone Pro will cost you £140 more than it did last year. Now, we do need to acknowledge that the exchange rate, thanks to various political situations, the pound has weakened considerably over the course of the last year.
Mm-hmm.
But these rises are still beyond inflation. Large rises doesn't take into account the fact that we're not getting some service and functionality that others are getting, especially when it is one of the main features of the new phone.
Yeah, it feels a bit irritating to have to pay more for less.
However, it's also the case that, we don't have the kind of can't even get the word out, backcountry.
No, we don't have places like the Yukon or even there's some vast places in the United States where it's very easy to be extremely remote. And I actually did try and look at this recently, where is the most remote place in the UK, and there isn't anywhere that you would truly call remote these days. You can't just get away from it all. Dartmoor, the Yorkshire Moors, admittedly if you go into Scotland a bit more, but it's not.
There are places where it would be useful, where some people would want to have it, but we don't have it, so that's that.
It's kind of a moot point.
It is, and I've got a table in front of me of the prices in various different countries, and what they've done is tried to balance this out by including sales tax, because of course the US prices never include sales tax, and sales tax varies massively depending on where you are in the country. So they've sort of got a best case and worst case scenario on this list. So for your basic 128 gig iPhone 14, still 128 gig, can you believe it? The US is still the cheapest place, even with the cheapest sales tax added, £711. And the most expensive phone in the US, most expensive sales tax included, would be £793. And here in the UK, we're paying £849. So we're paying quite a bit more. So the cheapest country after the United States, that's Japan, £722 equivalent in Japan. And the most expensive for that one phone is Turkey, where you'll pay £1,461 for an iPhone with 128 gigs.
I think Turkey is experiencing massive inflation, though, isn't it? So I don't know if that's a factor in that.
But there are other countries in here, like Brazil, stuff's expensive there, but take Sweden, they've got a reasonably strong economy, don't they? And Denmark, and they're 975.
I like Sweden. In fact, I like all the Scandinavian countries. They're very beautiful.
Yeah.
Very friendly people too.
Yeah. And of course, this is, I don't think Sweden is in the Euro, is it? Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I thought Sweden wasn't in the Euro, but the Euro countries, they're suffering
krona,
as well.
Swedish krona.
I thought so. Yeah, European countries, I mean, there are differences, but they're all more expensive than the UK as far as I can see. So it's an expensive phone.
It is.
Moving on, let's talk about the iPhone Pro.
Yes. Where would you like to start?
Well, it's got to be the purple one. We need an opinion on that, don't we? Purple iPhone Pro, Erin?
It's all right.
It's all right.
I've got a view. As I said to you, I think it will get tired quickly. I think it's one of those colours that after a few months you'll go, oh, if you get it.
You won't, because you'll never see it, because your iPhone will be in a case.
Well, that's true.
I couldn't even tell you what colour my iPhone is.
Mine's
I think
purple.
it's silver. Yours is purple.
Is
But
it?
the nice purple, not this
Okay.
ugly purple.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
you heard it here first. Ugly purple.
Which means it's probably quite good.
I thought they actually referred to it as deep purple. And
Yeah,
I'd have thought they'd get into some trademark issues on that.
Hush.
Very good.
Um,
Okay. main differences on the iPhone Pro.
It's got a camera with lots of the megapixels, hasn't it?
It has.
48 megapixels to be exact, with a quad pixel sensor.
Yeah, well, I've written that in, but there are various different ways of doing this, and I don't know
Right.
which one Apple is using.
Okay, so what? As you've written this, and I never do any prep work for this. It's all him. I just waffle. Why don't you speak?
Well, again, like I said, I don't know how they're doing it, but as far as I'm aware, the sensor is bigger, and there are 4 times as many pixels. Usually what happens in this kind of sensor is that you have 4 pixels for every one.
Yep.
And how they layer those up with the colors and the mini lenses and everything will vary depending on the technology. But the basic principle is if you're using 4 pixels to gather the same information as one, it gives you that opportunity to filter out noise,
Okay, that's cool.
because you can do a comparison and see what the 4. So basically, when you take a photo with this, it won't be 48 megapixels. Normally, if you're doing a JPEG, it will be, or an HEIF, depends. It's probably HEIF, isn't it? But it will be 12 megapixels still. So
Yeah.
what it does is it takes that information, it uses it to refine the image, give you better noise performance, and then you end up with the same 12 megapixel image. However, if you use the Pro RAW function, you will be able to access that full 48 megapixel file.
That's quite cool, isn't it? It'll be interesting to see how that technique with the option to bin will clarify the images and get less of that mush when you zoom in.
Well,
Because I know what you're talking about with the mush.
Yeah, I think it will be good. I mean, this is not unique to Apple. This is not some new technology. The sensors are probably made by Sony, and they happen in this same principle happens with much larger sensors as well. So if you take the Panasonic GH5S, pretty sure that has some form of quad pixel, and the A7 III's from Sony that does very amazing low light performance, but I think that one's also quite low megapixel count.
Yeah.
But you get this amazing low light performance because it's using 4 times as many pixels to figure everything out. So this is actually quite a leap forward. I would expect this to make a big difference to the quality of your photos once the light isn't as strong. You know, in broad daylight, sensor size really doesn't matter that much. But as soon as the light drops off, and the cameras perceive this very, and they're not as good as the human eye. We don't perceive the light drop off in the same way a camera does. As soon as it starts getting dark outside, as soon as the sun starts setting, the camera is going to start to struggle. There's a lot less light around.
Yeah.
I'll probably explain that really badly, but
No,
there we go.
I think I got it. And the iPhones have been consistently improving in their low light performance over the last few years. I get some really interesting low light shots, and I'm quite impressed with it.
Yeah, I took a nighttime handheld shot down at the coast, and I was astonished actually at how good it was. I mean, yeah, sure, pixel peep, zoom in, and it is mush. But if you posted it on Instagram, no one would ever know.
No.
At that kind of resolution, it's absolutely fine. So for most people with their snaps and the way that people are using photos now, they're not printing them out and putting them in albums. We have our photos on our phones. It's going to be absolutely perfect. So it means you're going to get great photos. If you're having a night out, the iPhone will be able to capture
It's got
it.
your back.
Now, we tried out cinematic mode on your phone recently in an ever so popular video on the main channel.
Yeah, that's going great guns. Thanks for that.
Okay. I think most people just aren't interested.
Well, that's because they aren't.
But one of the things that I was immediately surprised about, having done no research into it at all before we shot that video, is that you told me it was 1080p and locked to 30 frames per second, which is about as uncinematic as you can get.
Pretty much.
Now, you will be able to have the 24p and you'll get 4K.
Yeah, you will.
And I've noticed an extra note on the
No
file.
25p.
No 25p. I don't think that actually matters because we can get away with 24p in the UK. It'll work. It's close enough.
Okay. I'll let you off. But yeah, so that is good. And I get the sense that that's going to filter back to the iPhone 13.
Interesting.
But I can't be 100% on that. But
Well,
we'll have
there's
to
no.
see.
Again, we come back to the chip. We're going to talk about the chip in a minute, but I don't think there's any reason why that phone couldn't do it. Are you bored, Erin?
Nope.
Okay, just
I'm
checking.
loving it.
Just checking in.
I'm loving it.
Are you?
10 out of 10. Yep.
Excellent.
I'm bored.
You can always contribute.
Yep.
So the new display on the iPhone Pro,
It has some more nits.
more nits. We've done the nits joke before,
Yeah.
so we won't go
can
there
skip
again,
over
Erin.
it.
Yeah, so brighter display, 1600 nits with up to 2000 peak brightness.
Pretty useful if you're out in bright sunlight.
Definitely.
And that was one of the issues we had actually when we were filming
Mm.
with your phone, is that the display wasn't bright enough to see what was going on.
Yeah,
So makes a difference.
definitely.
Good. And of course, we get the always on display. And the Android fanboys have had a field day with this. You know, Apple late to the party, whatever. Does it? I don't know why people get so obsessed with these things.
Mm.
If you like an Android phone, get an Android phone. If you want an iPhone, get an iPhone. Why does everyone have to fight each other over it?
Oh, I don't know.
Do whatever you like, folks. There we go. Just
Yeah,
don't
I think-
force your opinions on everyone else.
That's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah. Always on display. So the display goes down to 1 frame per second or 1 hertz, and that's how it does the always on thing. And it also dims the display so that it doesn't use loads of battery. So basically exactly what we discussed on our last podcast. That's what we were expecting. And that is indeed what has
We
happened.
were right, yeah.
Let's talk about the chip.
Yes.
The A16. So there is a new chip. After all, Pete, a new chip.
Tell me more, because you're the chip meister, aren't you?
Well, Tim Cook proudly announced they got a new chip on the 4 nanometer process and then described the chip, and it sounds exactly like an A15. But on TSMC's N4 node. And that is basically an enhanced version of their N5P node. So,
You got that?
Yep.
Good, because
well, usually what happens with your silicon fabrication, when you go to a smaller process node, a smaller size, then you get massive increases in efficiency,
okay,
which allows you to increase performance.
good.
So you might think dropping from 5 nanometer to 4 nanometer would be such an increase, and it absolutely is not in this case.
Oh,
And
ploppers.
in fact, I've seen some people saying that the 4 nanometer or the N4 process is actually 5 nanometer, not 4 nanometer, but I couldn't find any confirmation of that myself.
Have you got a ruler? Could you confirm it yourself?
You'd have to have a very small ruler and a very small pencil to check that, I think.
Does it really matter how small the ruler is? Because it could be a long ruler. It's more about the increments on it, doesn't it?
It possibly is. I hadn't thought about it in any great depth, to be honest, Pete, before you threw that at me.
Well, there you go.
I've
Could use
never
a,
been shopping for a nanometer ruler.
Could use a vernier caliper. They're a little bit more accurate.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for those helpful suggestions, Pete.
I'm-
It's really adding to the richness of the content.
I like to add value to the podcast in
Thank you.
ways that people don't need.
Or want. So what we're basically saying is that there's very minimal performance gains. Now, this does not mean that when Apple goes to TSMC's 3 nanometer process that the same thing will be the case, because that is an entirely new process. So what we've got here is a revision of a process or an
It's
enhancement
like a
to it.
0.1, isn't it, really, as opposed to a
Yeah.
whole version.
That's it. And the performance gains are very minimal. And also, Apple were claiming additional single core performance, but I have seen rumors and talk online that they've achieved this by overclocking one of the performance cores for the purpose of a benchmark.
Right. Okay.
And if they're playing that game, then there will be backlash for that, without any doubt. We'll find out once these things drop later this week, I guess. Is it this week for the Pro or is it next week? Not sure.
That's how excited I am about it that I haven't bothered to look or remember.
Well, it'll be interesting to see anyway. And of course, if that's what they are doing, overclocking a single performance core in order to get a better single-threaded score, that has no real-world application whatsoever. And I suspect, and indeed I am confident in saying, that nobody will be able to tell the difference in the real world between the A16 and the A15. that's
Unless
in
the
your
software
13 Pro.
hobbles the older version to make it more noticeable. But Apple have never really done that, have they?
So I feel like that's I'm quite disappointed about that, because I was looking to the A16 as possibly the framework for M3, but maybe we've got to wait for that. So maybe next year's chip is going to be a big jump. If they jump onto 3 nanometer next year for the A17, that's going to be a much bigger jump. So if you're thinking about, I need more performance in my iPhone, which you don't,
Wait.
but if you think you do, then wait till next year.
And I think this is probably why we felt so disappointed, is we've had so many sort of leaps forward in the last few years with Apple, that really, and we have said this, they can't keep going like that. So, yeah, we're victims of our own expectation, even though I had no expectation for this event. So there you go.
It just seems like they're just trying to sell stuff.
Yeah, like it's almost like they're a business.
Anyway, we need to move on. Dynamic Island.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't like the notch, do they? And this is kind of a how to do the pill and on your phone, you know, the pill cutout as opposed to the notch. And for me, if I could put it into sort of real terms, it's like when you see Erin in something that's ghastly, and then she tries to make it better by wearing something else that's even worse. That's kind of how I see this Dynamic Island nonsense.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, is it an innovation? God, Erin's giving Pete the evils there. Is it an innovation? What was that noise you just made?
That was a derisive snort.
Was it? I thought a horse had walked into our studio for a moment.
What's the most important part of a horse?
Go on.
The main bit.
For goodness sake. Yeah. I totally lost my point. All right, pick up your phone there, Pete. You've got the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Hold it in the normal way in which you would hold your phone.
Okay.
Excellent. Now imagine that your phone does not have a notch, it has a pill, and that you need to just reach up there with your thumb and interact with it.
Yeah. It's not easy, is it?
No, you've got to change your grip on the phone, and you almost just dropped your phone. So that's, I think, it seems to me like it's, first of all, it's good that they've hidden the pill like that. And I think a lot of people are very happy and excited about that. And I get that. I also feel like it's a lot of effort has gone into hiding the pill, whereas maybe perhaps that effort should have gone into another solution that isn't a cutout of the display.
Yeah. I was. They were making this big thing about it. And you know, sometimes even if you don't think that's for me, you can see the innovation. You think that's impressive. I think, you know, yes, you could see the amount of effort they put into it, and they were clearly very pleased with themselves. But I was kind of like fixing the problem that I don't think was there.
No. Well, well, okay. So we said before this, when we were talking about the rumours, we said, I think all of us agreed that we would prefer the notch over this. Have you changed your opinion?
No.
You'd still prefer a notch?
Erin?
Notch, definitely.
I'd prefer a notch. However, is the pill made more tolerable by the fact that they've done this Dynamic Island business?
No. It's hard to say without having used it for a time. My feeling is that...
Because you're going to end up with it, aren't you? When we upgrade the phones, inevitably you'll have no choice. So at some point you're going to be living with it. Is it going to upset you, or do you think you'll...
I suspect it'll be like everything else. It'll take a while to get used to, and then it'll be part of normal. So, and this is kind of where a lot of stuff that people get up in arms about, like notches or not notches or pills or Dynamic Islands or whatever it is, after a few weeks you don't notice it anyway. So quit your whining.
You're on one today. Say it how you think it, Pete.
Yeah.
Don't worry about who you'll upset.
Well, it might get us a bit more engagement.
Possibly. Erin, how do you feel about the pill now that Dynamic Island is available?
I think it's done better than other companies who have a little hole punch. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although, of course, it will be on every Android. In fact, it already is. There is an Android phone that's already tried to copy it.
Is there?
Yeah. Wow. So there's your iPhones. I think if you've already got an iPhone 13, there's not a massively compelling reason to upgrade.
I agree.
And-
I have absolutely no desire in the slightest to upgrade.
And I don't have any desire, and I'm 2 generations old now, so let us know if you feel differently. I know some of you will no doubt be upgrading and buying the phone. I have to say trade-in prices are awful in the UK, so not quite the same as the US. But anyway, there we go. There's the iPhone. Let's talk about just briefly now. We'll cover off Watch and AirPods Pro. I mean, the new Apple Watch, it's kind of the old Apple Watch, isn't it?
Oh, I can ovulate more accurately with it.
It's good to know that you'll be able to manage your ovulations, Pete. So
Absolutely.
this is the thing, though, right? That I don't wear my Apple Watch that often because I get a little bit irritated because the Apple Watch tells me to stand up, to sit down, to go to sleep, to get up, to walk more, to do more. And now apparently it's also going to tell us to get on the job.
I don't think you can say that.
Can I not say? I think I did say that. But, well, it's true, though, isn't it? I mean, do we want our lives to be completely run by a watch? Do you want to hand over control of your life to...
I would say for people who perhaps are trying to conceive,
Yeah, that's fair enough.
then, they are doing this process already, perhaps manually or with other means. So I would say it's very useful for that. The lady who was presenting this did say that ovulation health is considered by many doctors to be a key sign of health. So maybe we're making light of something that Apple have put a lot of thought into, and maybe there is a segment that will appreciate it. Obviously, we're not the target market.
It's very difficult for us to properly understand this, and I would ask Erin for her opinion,
No.
but I think it would be
No,
inappropriate, so
you're
I'm not going to.
I
So
have
we'll move
some
on.
great insights on this.
Crack on then.
I think it's a really, really nice feature because all girls need to track their periods to make sure when it's going to come, like dates you're going to be on your period. It helps with your health. If you're on the pill, it means you can track like when you are more fertile and when you're not. So I think it's a very important feature, and I'm glad that they've added it in.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Erin. And that was actually insightful.
Yeah.
See,
Wow,
she
that's the
kept
first time for everything.
Yep, very good. Very good. Thank you.
So basically, your Apple Watch will be able to tell you when you need to break out the white shorts and the roller skates.
Right.
So, it does get the crash detection. We've already talked about that. So
Low
don't
power
need to-
mode, which actually makes it more. I was actually quite impressed with this, and again, I hope this is. I think they did say this would be backward compatible with the new Watch OS. That can extend your battery life up to 36 hours by only turning off certain things,
Okay,
as opposed to everything.
good.
So that's good, apart from the time.
So again, it's a case of if you got last year's watch, do you need to buy this year's watch?
Probably not. Not unless some of the things that Erin just mentioned are really important in your life, which
Yeah.
for some it might be.
Yeah. We got a Watch SE, of course, which now gets the same chip as the Series 8 watch, but it doesn't have the always-on display. Does get the low power mode.
Yeah. All the watches get that, I think.
Excellent. And it's $30 cheaper now in the US. It used to be $279, now it's $249. What do you think about that, Aaron?
It's not cheap, is it?
Everything is relative, I think. It's the cheapest in the range.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Speaking of not cheap, though, do you remember the original watch and they did the gold one? That was about 15, 16 grand or something. And I
Yes.
saw an amusing story the other day. Whether or not it's true, I don't know, but it amused me that somebody was in the Apple store and someone came in with one of these gold watches and the display had popped out. So they wanted to get it fixed and were basically told it was obsolete.
Which is exactly what we predicted when it came out, long before we did the podcast.
And the thing is that the amount of gold that's in the watch is nowhere near the amount they charge for it. So it's worth about half what you paid for it in the gold. So you're just paying an enormous markup for the privilege of walking around with a gold Apple Watch. And I think,
would put to you, if you can afford that kind of price, then you can probably afford to have that news broken to you, can't you?
Perhaps. I don't think being wealthy means that you should accept that kind of thing. But there we go. The price in the UK is £259. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that is also cheaper. because I think it was 279, but I could be wrong with that.
There's
Please
no way to know.
correct me in the comments. Watch 3, which Apple has been continuing to sell, which is a disgrace really, because it doesn't actually support the current Watch OS. They finally discontinued that.
Yeah. Good.
So yeah, it's still not a cheap watch. It's not going to last you very long. I don't know what the life cycle of a watch you could realistically expect is. 3 to 5 years maybe.
Yeah, I
if
would
you're
say.
very, very careful with it.
Yeah, no, you can. You can.
Because as soon as you smash the display, that's it.
I've got a Series 2 that's still running.
Excellent.
I'm obviously not wearing it, but my son is using it.
All right. I guess the big news is the Watch Ultra.
That is a good-looking piece of kit.
It really isn't, though, is it?
No.
In fairness, now I was going to wear my Casio G-Shock today,
Which is also
not a good-looking piece of kit.
Yeah,
But
hit by the ugly stick and every branch on the way down.
But I guess people still buy them because it's a lot of it is nostalgia. That's the way G-Shock has always been since the 80s, and it's what you expect to see. So you kind of accept it. So having a watch that's big and ugly isn't necessarily a problem. And some people will buy it even though they think it's ugly.
Some people would say my mechanical watch is ugly, but I absolutely adore it. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
It is. It is. There is a certain angle, though. If you look at the watch, sort of straight on from the it has got a bit of a Fiat 500 vibe about it. It's got that kind of bulbous bit and then a bit on the top.
I'm not going to buy one, just to be clear, but I don't think it's as bad as you're making out, personally.
I wasn't making it out that it was.
I think, if you're alpining or submarining or any of these things, desert running, then I think, you want the tool, don't you? You're not so fussed about how it looks.
I think it's fair to say though, and let's be fair here, like many other watches for these applications, most people who buy it will not be doing any of those things.
Well, the Mars edition's coming out soon to go with my Mars colony ship.
Excellent.
So
Thanks
you can wear it outside the spacesuit.
Well, look, it's got an extra button.
It's an action button.
Wow, it's exciting.
Actually, there's some good features in that. I did like being able to backtrack from where you are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you've ever been walking with someone who works in our agency is a keen walker, and he does indeed like to walk in places where there are no paths and basically get lost. He always says he knows where he's going, but from personal experience, I don't think that is always strictly true. So something like this where you could step back and find the path again, I mean, yeah, you could do it other ways, but I think that's quite cool.
It is good. So this is the refined compass app, and the GPS in this watch now has L5 support, so it should be more on par with the likes of the Garmin watches, which have traditionally been more accurate than Apple Watch.
And I spoke to my wife about this because she used to do marathon running and that kind of thing, so she's a Garmin fan. And when I said about Apple brought out this new watch for these things, and she said, yeah, but the Garmin's still going to be superior. And I told her about the battery life up to 60 hours, which I know I'm going ahead, but I'm just going to do it, and the L5 GPS, and she raised her eyebrows in approval. So I think Apple are going after a segment here that the Apple Watch hasn't really been appropriate for.
But in fairness, imagine your wife's wrists and now put an Apple Watch Ultra on it.
I would say it would give her really good bicep definition, but she kind of already does have that from the kind of day-to-day activities that she's involved in.
Well, I don't have huge wrists. I don't have small wrists either, but I think I would find that too big. It's interesting. It's an interesting product for outdoorsing and stuff. It's got the emergency siren as well. So, Erin, if you were outdoors and you got completely lost, I caught you right in the middle of a yawn there, didn't I?
I just really love watches.
It's just as well she wasn't being filmed at that point.
You could have. Anyway, if you get really lost or you're in danger, perhaps you're out in the woods. You've got your Apple Watch Ultra sort of on your wrist. Most of it's balanced on your wrist. Some of it's not quite on your wrist, obviously, because it's so huge. There's a small moon orbiting it because of its gravitational pull. But then a bear comes to attack you, and you can set off the alarm.
You missed a great opportunity for a pun gag there.
Did I?
Yeah, you should have said, so you're in the woods, okay, you got your Apple Watch, bear with me. Well, bear with you, actually. See? Yeah.
Excellent. Sapphire crystal, which should be on all the Apple Watches for the price they charge.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that it doesn't have sapphire crystal. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically a piece of glass that can't be broken. Very, very hard, very difficult to scratch. At the very least, it should be mineral glass on the Apple Watch, but it's not. It's super fragile
It's
Gorilla
basically
Glass.
picture glass, isn't it? That's what it is.
Very easy to break. So I think all the watches should have that.
If you go for the diving watch, then you do get the. They've done this collaboration with Hewish Outdoors, haven't they, as well, for the dive computer? I believe there's an app already. Now, I know I have been diving, but I don't really know anything about it. But I do understand that you need to calculate various things when you're diving. So having something on your wrist that is a dive computer for that is a good safety thing again. So for those that need it, it probably will be great.
I felt that the crown guard design is a little bit flawed. I can see bits of grit getting in there and stopping the crown from being movable.
Yeah.
I'm sure Apple must have tested that. You'd like to think Apple would test their products thoroughly before they release them.
Next year it'll be Tim saying we've redefined Apple Watch Ultra, and this year, less grit will be getting. They'll spin it.
I looked at this though, and I looked at the shape of it because the shape around the crown is circular, and it's very close to the crown. Which if you get something stuck in there, it could be a challenge. But I looked at some other watches on, famous watches, expensive watches, and they have similar designs. So maybe that's an unwarranted fear. Time will tell. Let's get to the battery life though.
Mm-hmm.
Now you said 60 hours.
Up to 60 hours.
Now I make that 2.5 days. Is that enough time to get to the top of your mountain of choice and back again?
It is to my mountain of choice. I can do my mountain of choice in a day.
But the sort of like massive outdoor expedition that you might expect somebody, projected user of this watch.
There's a
is that
really
enough?
there's a really good Netflix. I think it's a Netflix documentary about a guy who did. I think it's 50 Peaks. I think it might actually be called 50 Peaks. He's
in a year.
Yeah, something like that. And have you seen it? It's actually
I'm
quite
aware of it.
Yeah, it's actually a very touching, moving feat of human endeavour. Well worth watching. And they were talking order of days to get up mountains, but I suspect 2.5 days.
Well, look,
probably not enough.
Let's put this into perspective. So let's take the Garmin Fenix or Phoenix, however you say it, 7, and I think the cheapest version of that is £600.
Yeah.
So it's a good deal cheaper. That has a battery life of 38 days.
Yeah, but can you track your ovulation on it?
I knew you were going to say that. And no, I don't think you can. But look, you've got to think about the features that are important to you. And these features that have been added to Apple Watch Ultra are great for those who specifically need them, but I suspect most people don't need those features. And if you do need very specific features, you might buy a tool that is entirely made for those specific features.
Absolutely. And I think there will continue to be those that will go for specialist equipment. For that reason, of course.
Yeah, you're going to go for a Garmin or a Suunto or something like that, aren't you? If you're serious about this kind of stuff.
If you're more of a hobbyist in a chosen thing, like you like to go for walking, maybe even for a day or two, out in the wilds, out in the backcountry, then you might go, well, for that occasional thing, I don't need the specialist watch. I want all the other features as well. I'm going to go for one of these, and there's a fashion point for it as well, isn't there? I suspect for those that want it.
So £849 in the UK. It's expensive. It's not as expensive as I thought it might have been. I think it's still expensive for a watch that is effectively going to be obsolete at some point.
Yeah. So I've got a view on this. You're absolutely right. It is going to be obsolete. So from that point of view, I don't think it represents good value for money. But you could argue that about any, like a Garmin, eventually is going to be obsolete because they are technology as opposed to mechanical. But if you compare it to, say, a stainless steel cased Apple Watch, you're talking Well, they start from about £730 and they go up to £829, not including the Hermes nonsense.
Yeah.
So you're getting a titanium case and you're getting this extraordinary battery life and these other bits and pieces for, in some cases, £30 more. I think that makes it an interesting price point. And I would say that I would be more inclined to go for one of those because of that than a stainless steel one.
Yeah, if your wrist can support that size. So there we go. Anyway, there's Apple Watch. And finally, just a quick word on AirPods Pro 2. So these feature a new H2 chip, so you get a new adaptive transparency mode. They're claiming richer bass. As expected, the battery life has been brought more in line with the other AirPods. And you can charge the case with the Apple Watch wireless charger.
Which is great.
Yeah.
That's
Or
good.
Lightning.
Yeah, yeah.
No
Yeah, a lot of
mention of
people
USB-C at all.
A lot of people are really cross about that. Not just for that, but for the iPhone as well.
Yeah. I thought that had been mandated by...
Well, it has, but I think it's next year it's got to come in by.
Right.
So, yeah, there was actually quite a Twitter storm about it that evening about USB-C. Some people are absolutely furious about it. And I can see their point because Apple go on about environmental credentials, this and that, but you know, the amount of people who are probably going to have to buy new cables or replacement cables because of this, it doesn't stack up, does it?
No. The case now has a speaker for... You can use it to bleep if you lose it. We're using the Find My app.
Which is great for those that lose their cases.
These are called... Do you lose your case? You don't have AirPods.
Why would I?
No. So we've got... they're called AirPods Pro, but they still don't support any lossless codecs.
No.
In fact, Tim Cook claimed, and I quote, "the best and most popular headphones in the world." Well, I'm sorry, but that's just not the case. Most popular, well, you'd need to qualify that by price range. And best, absolutely not. By any objective measurement, they're not the best headphones that you can buy. If price isn't an object, I'm not saying they're bad headphones, but a bit of an odd claim to make because it's just not true.
Nonsense spin, isn't it?
And I can't help but feel that all of these headphones are a bit of an environmental disaster. Again, I was saying to Erin earlier, I bought some Sony earbuds from the Apple Store in New York in 2006. I still have them. They still work exactly as they did back then. You just plug them into anything that has a 3.5mm audio jack, and I won't get rid of them. I'll continue to use them. And
so where do you plug it in on this?
Well, you can get a little adapter.
Can you?
They used to give it to you, but they don't anymore. But yeah, you can get a little
environmental reasons, I'm sure.
This is the thing, constant nattering about environment, and yet each year we're being pushed to upgrade, and okay, yeah, they'll take your phone back and recycle it and all the rest of it, but it's just better for the environment that products last longer. But of course, you can't make as much in the trillions of dollars range if you do that.
And this is part of the problem, isn't it, with a lot of these things? It's that we live in a society where everyone wants new, businesses have to grow and make money, and therefore genuine reasons are going to end up getting... Yeah, I've got to be careful here, but there's not always the motivation to do the very best thing for the environment, is there?
No. Anyway, an interesting selection of releases. I think most of it was expected. Some surprises along the way. What did you think? What were your highlights of the event? Is there anything you're going to rush out and buy? Do you disagree? I'm sure you do with some of the things that we've said, especially what Pete's been saying today.
Yeah, I've been quite controversial. Has this podcast been slightly more entertaining than the event itself?
I don't know. I know that we did say we were going to keep it to an hour because we haven't had lunch yet, and it's 15. Now 1:45, Pete.
I know. I've been watching it, wondering when you'd shut up.
So let's indeed do that. Let's shut up.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks for the new subscribers. And we'll see you again soon on the Constant Geekery podcast.
Cheerio.